I found out my kids have been replacing me in my own parenting program. I, 48, have been running connected parenting workshops for 12 years. After struggling through my own parenting challenges with my 3 kids, I developed a program that combines practical strategies with emotional intelligence. What started as informal sessions in my living room grew into a successful business with workshops, online courses, and a strong community following. My approach isn't fancy or academic. It's real, honest, and based on what actually worked for me and hundreds of other parents. 6 months ago, my daughter Ashley, 26, and son Marcus, 24, offered to help me expand the program. They'd both gotten degrees in psychology and education, and they said they wanted to apply their formal training to enhance what I'd built. I was thrilled. They started attending my workshops as assistants, helping with registration and materials while I taught the content I'd developed over a decade. Last week, a woman stopped me at the grocery store and thanked me for the new format of the workshops. She said Ashley's approach was more evidence-based and professional than the old style. I had no idea what she meant by new format. I'd been teaching the same core content I always had. When I got home, I checked our workshop schedule and found something shocking. For the past 3 months, Ashley and Marcus had been teaching half of the scheduled sessions themselves, sessions that were listed on our website as still being taught by me. I pulled up recordings from our online workshops that I thought I'd been teaching. They were Ashley and Marcus, presenting my material but with significant changes. My personal stories about struggling with my own kids were replaced with clinical studies and research papers. My practical, empathetic approach was repackaged as academic psychology. My worksheets and exercises had been redesigned with professional graphics, but fundamentally altered in content. I looked deeper into what was happening. Ashley and Marcus had gradually taken over teaching most of the sessions over the past 4 months. They'd tell participants I was unavailable or handling administrative work while they led the workshops. They'd been systematically editing my course materials, removing my voice and replacing it with textbook psychology and parenting theory. I found they'd created a new business entity called Connected Parenting Institute without telling me. They'd registered it in their names, moved our social media accounts under their control, and were gradually rebranding everything. My photo was becoming smaller on materials while theirs grew larger. The program description changed from Founder Catherine Morrison shares her journey through parenting challenges to evidence-based parenting strategies developed by certified professionals. They'd been telling new clients that I was transitioning to a consultant role, while they took over as the primary instructors. Longtime participants who specifically wanted my approach were being told I was cutting back due to age, and that Ashley and Marcus represented the new generation of the program with updated methods and credentials. I discovered their real motivation through a proposal they'd submitted to a major parenting organization. They wanted to franchise Connected Parenting nationally, positioning themselves as the founders of an evidence-based parenting program. My name appeared once in the proposal as someone who'd inspired early development of the program, like I was a distant predecessor rather than the creator of everything they were building on. The proposal emphasized their degrees and credentials, while downplaying that the entire approach came from my real-life experience parenting them. The authentic, vulnerable stories that made the program relatable were being replaced with academic theory. Parents came to my workshops because I'd lived through the struggles and figured out what worked, not because I had a psychology degree. A major parenting conference was happening next month with 2,000 attendees, including educators, therapists, and parents. Ashley and Marcus had submitted a proposal to present about Connected Parenting Institute and were accepted as featured speakers. The conference program listed them as founders of Connected Parenting Institute, with no mention that I'd created the entire program they were presenting. I contacted the conference organizers and explained the situation. They were disturbed to learn that the founders weren't actually the founder, and offered me speaking time immediately following Ashley and Marcus's presentation. At the conference, Ashley and Marcus gave their presentation confidently, discussing their evidence-based parenting approach and their Connected Parenting Institute. They showed slides with research and statistics, professional graphics, and clinical language. The audience seemed engaged, but I noticed some confused looks from parents who'd attended my actual workshops and recognized the concepts but not the delivery. Then, I took the stage. I explained I was Catherine Morrison, the actual creator of Connected Parenting 12 years ago. I showed the evolution of the program from my living room sessions to what it became, all based on my real struggles with my real kids, including Ashley and Marcus themselves. I displayed my original handwritten worksheets next to their redesigned versions, showing how my authentic voice was being replaced with academic jargon. I revealed that Ashley and Marcus had systematically taken over the program without my knowledge, rebranded it under their names, and were presenting themselves as founders of something I'd built over a decade. The conference audience was shocked when I showed the business registration documents with my name absent, the proposal calling me merely an inspiration, and evidence that they'd been teaching my workshops while telling people I was stepping back. Several parents in the audience who'd attended my original workshops stood up and confirmed the program had fundamentally changed, losing the authentic relatability that made it valuable. The conference organizers publicly stated they wouldn't have accepted the proposal if they'd known it misrepresented the program's origins. Ashley and Marcus lost credibility in the parenting education community. The franchise proposal was rejected. Most participants requested refunds and said they'd signed up for my approach, not an academic repackaging. I've reclaimed control of Connected Parenting, removed them from business operations, and returned to teaching workshops personally. The program they tried to take over is mine again, authentic and imperfect, and based on real experience rather than credentials they used to justify pushing me out of my own creation. I discovered my family has been sabotaging my stand-up comedy performances. I, 49, started doing stand-up comedy 2 years ago after my youngest went to college. It began as something to check off my bucket list, one open mic night. But I found I genuinely enjoyed it. I'm not trying to quit my day job as an accountant, but performing at open mics in small comedy clubs twice a month has given me an outlet I didn't know I needed. My material focuses on suburban parenting, middle-age observations, and the absurdity of everyday life. 7 weeks ago, my performances started going badly. I'd be mid-set when someone in the audience would heckle aggressively, not the playful back and forth that's normal in comedy, but hostile interruptions designed to derail my rhythm. At one venue, someone kept loudly fact-checking my jokes, shouting, "That's not how it actually happened," during stories clearly meant as exaggerated comedy. Then, comedy club bookers started pulling back. The manager at a club where I'd performed 3 times told me other comedians had complained I was difficult to work with and created drama backstage. I was confused. I'd never had conflicts with other comics. I showed up on time, was respectful, and stayed in my lane. But suddenly I was developing a reputation as someone who brought problems. A fellow comedian named Marcus pulled me aside after a set and asked if everything was okay. He said my wife had messaged him on Instagram claiming I was struggling with mental health issues, and my comedy was becoming obsessive and unhealthy. She'd asked him to keep an eye on me and report if I seemed unstable. Marcus thought it was strange enough to mention. I checked my social media and found my wife, Denise, 47, had been messaging multiple people in the local comedy scene. Comics, club managers, open mic hosts. She was presenting herself as my concerned spouse, worried about my mental state, suggesting my comedy was a symptom of a midlife crisis that had gone too far. My daughter Kennedy, 21, had created a fake audience member persona and was attending my shows specifically to heckle disruptively. The aggressive fact-checker, the person who'd shouted over my punchlines, all Kennedy wearing different outfits and changing her appearance enough that I hadn't recognized my own daughter sabotaging my sets. My son Graham, 24, had been spreading rumors at comedy open mics I wasn't attending, telling other comics I'd badmouthed them or claimed credit for their jokes. He'd created conflicts and drama I knew nothing about, then let other comedians confront me about things I'd never said or done. Their coordination messages revealed everything. Denise wrote, "Messaged 3 more club managers expressing concern about his mental stability. Should damage his reputation enough to stop bookings." Kennedy added, "Heckled him again tonight. He completely lost his rhythm and bombed the rest of his set." Graham contributed, "Told 5 comics at the open mic he's been stealing material. They're pissed. They wanted me to quit comedy because they found it embarrassing." Denise wrote that when her book club friends asked about my hobbies, she hated saying stand-up comedy for a middle-aged accountant. Kennedy complained her boyfriend thought it was cringe that her dad did comedy. Graham said his coworkers mocked him when they found videos of my performances online. The damage was real. My reputation in the small, local comedy scene was suffering based entirely on manufactured drama and false concerns about my mental health. Comics I'd respected started avoiding me. Clubs stopped responding to my booking inquiries. The annual local comedy showcase was next month, featuring the best comics from the regional scene performing for 400 people, including club owners, talent scouts, and comedy fans. I'd been selected to perform a 7-minute set after 2 years of consistently showing up at open mics. My family said they'd finally attend one of my performances to see what this comedy thing is actually about. I documented everything and showed it to the showcase organizers. The fake heckler being my daughter, the Instagram messages from my wife claiming I was mentally unstable, my son spreading false rumors about stolen material. The organizers were appalled and offered me time to address sabotage before my scheduled set. At the showcase, I took the mic and explained that comedy has many challenges: tough crowds, bombing sets, building material. But sometimes, the toughest challenge is family members who systematically sabotage your performances because they're embarrassed you do comedy at all. I showed screenshots of Denise's messages to club managers claiming I was mentally unstable, video comparison proving Kennedy was the aggressive heckler across multiple shows, and testimony from comics confirming Graham had spread false rumors about me stealing material. I explained that my difficult reputation was entirely manufactured by family members who thought a 49-year-old accountant shouldn't do stand-up comedy. Several comedy club managers in the audience confirmed they'd received concerning messages about me from my wife, which had influenced their booking decisions. Comics stood up, saying Graham had told them I'd badmouthed them, creating conflicts that had never happened. Marcus verified that Denise had contacted him with mental health concerns that seemed manufactured. Denise tried to claim she was genuinely worried about my well-being. A veteran comic responded that concerned spouses don't sabotage performances and spread reputation-damaging lies. They have conversations. Kennedy admitted she'd heckled because watching me perform made her uncomfortable. And multiple comics explained that disrupting someone's set is one of the worst violations of comedy community norms. My family left humiliated. The showcase set went well, and afterwards several club managers apologized for believing the false concerns and offered future bookings. I'm divorcing Denise after she deliberately damaged my reputation in a community I'd worked hard to earn respect in. Kennedy and Graham are estranged, while I decide if relationships can recover from them sabotaging something that brought me joy because it embarrassed them socially. The comedy community has been supportive. Many comics shared stories of family members who didn't support their comedy. The showcase where I was supposed to prove I belonged in the scene became the moment everyone learned my place in that scene had been undermined by family members who thought middle-aged accountants shouldn't do stand-up. Some think I should have confronted them privately, but the comedy showcase seemed like the right venue to expose how comedy can be sabotaged by those who find your creative pursuit embarrassing rather than admirable. I found out my family has been deliberately scaring away children I was trying to foster. I, 44, have been a licensed foster parent for 4 years. After my youngest child graduated high school and moved out, I had space in my home and heart for kids who needed temporary placement. I've successfully fostered 8 children during this time, providing safe homes during difficult transitions. Some stayed a few weeks, others several months. It's emotionally demanding work, but I found it deeply meaningful. 6 months ago, my placements started falling through in unusual ways. Social workers would call saying a child was coming. I'd prepare the bedroom and get everything ready, then get a last-minute call that the placement wasn't happening. The reasons varied. The child didn't feel comfortable with the home. Concerns were raised about the household environment, or the child requested a different placement after the initial meeting. This happened 5 times in 6 months. Each time, I'd meet the child briefly during the introduction visit. Everything would seem fine, then suddenly the placement would be canceled. My social worker Janelle seemed confused because my home studies were excellent, my references strong, and my track record solid. She couldn't understand why placements kept falling apart at the last minute. Last week, I was approved for a 13-year-old girl named Kayla, who'd been in emergency placement and needed a stable home. During our introduction meeting at the agency office, she seemed cautiously optimistic. We talked about her interests. I showed her photos of the bedroom, and she agreed to the placement starting that Friday. Then, Thursday evening, Janelle called saying Kayla had changed her mind and requested a different foster home. I asked to speak with Kayla directly to understand what changed. She eventually admitted someone had contacted her claiming to be a former foster kid from my home, warning her that I was nice at first but controlling, and that my household had weird rules that made kids miserable. I traced the contact back through the foster care agency's communication system. Someone had accessed information about incoming placements and contacted the children before they moved in, posing as former foster children and warning them away. The messages came from my home IP address. I installed monitoring software and discovered my husband Brett, 46, and our adult children Noah, 22, and Harper, 20, had been accessing my foster care documents and contacting incoming placements. They'd find out when a child was approved, research enough about foster care to sound credible, then reach out, claiming to be former foster kids with warnings about my home. Their messages were carefully crafted to scare vulnerable children without being obviously false. They'd warn about strict rules that were actually just normal boundaries, describe my care as controlling when it was actually structure, and claim my home was not a good fit for kids who need space when I actually provided appropriate supervision. I found their planning messages. Brett wrote, "Another placement scheduled for next month. I'll send the warnings like before." Noah added, "I told the last kid that mom would go through their stuff constantly. That's usually enough to make them request a different home." Harper contributed, "Found this one's case number. I'll contact her tomorrow through the youth portal." Their motivation was clear from the conversation. They wanted me to stop fostering. Brett resented having stranger kids in our home. Noah and Harper felt displaced when they visited, and there were foster children staying in their old bedrooms. Instead of discussing their concerns, they'd been systematically sabotaging placements for 6 months, preventing vulnerable children from getting the stable homes they needed. The foster care agency was hosting a volunteer appreciation dinner next month, honoring foster parents and showcasing the program to potential supporters. Over 200 people would attend: current and former foster parents, social workers, agency board members, and community advocates. I was being recognized for 4 years of service and had been asked to speak briefly about my fostering experience. I showed Janelle everything: the sabotage messages from my family members, their coordination, proof they'd been accessing confidential foster care information to contact children. The agency was horrified and offered me time during the dinner to address barriers foster parents face. At the dinner, I explained that I'd had 5 failed placements in 6 months after years of successful fostering. Then I revealed why. My own family had been deliberately scaring children away by posing as former foster kids and sending warnings designed to make vulnerable children refuse placement. I displayed their messages on venue screens, the warnings they'd sent to children about my home, their coordination about which child to contact next, their celebration when placements fell through. I explained that 5 children who needed stable homes had been scared into refusing placement because my husband and adult children found fostering inconvenient. Janelle confirmed that these 5 children had ultimately found placements elsewhere, but the delays caused by my family's interference meant they'd spent additional weeks in emergency placements or group homes rather than getting stable foster care when they needed it. Several foster parents in the audience stood up, expressing outrage that someone would deliberately sabotage placements for vulnerable children. One former foster youth spoke about how critical stable placements are and how devastating it would have been if someone had scared her away from a good home. Brett, Noah, and Harper tried to claim they were concerned about my well-being and stress levels. I responded that scaring traumatized children away from stable homes wasn't concern. It was cruelty to both me and the children. They'd prioritized their convenience over vulnerable kids' needs. The agency banned my family from accessing any foster care information or visiting when I had placements. Most of our family sided with me, horrified that they'd deliberately interfered with child welfare. Brett and I are separated while I decide if the marriage can recover from him sabotaging work that helps vulnerable children. I've resumed taking placements with new security measures protecting confidential information. The work my family tried to destroy continues, and the children they scared away found other homes, though they suffered unnecessary delays. Some think I should have handled it privately, but the appreciation dinner honoring foster parents seemed like the right moment to reveal how fostering had been sabotaged by family members who found it inconvenient and chose to harm vulnerable children rather than discuss their concerns. I found out my family has been posting inflammatory content under my blogging account. I, 49, have run a popular lifestyle blog called Honest Mom Chronicles for 8 years. What started as me sharing real parenting struggles and family life evolved into a community of 300,000 followers. I write honestly about raising teenagers, marriage challenges, and navigating middle age. My authenticity is my brand. I'm not perfect, I admit mistakes, and I talk about real life without filters. 3 months ago, comments on my posts started getting hostile. People accused me of being judgmental, hypocritical, and mean-spirited. I was confused because I reread my recent posts and they seemed like my usual content. Honest, but never cruel. Then, a follower messaged me privately, saying she was disappointed I'd changed so much, and that my recent posts attacking single mothers were shocking and hurtful. I searched my blog for posts about single mothers. I found one from 2 weeks earlier that I absolutely did not write. It was published under my name, in my general style, but the content was harsh and judgmental, criticizing single mothers for making poor choices, and claiming children needed 2-parent households to be successful. This wasn't just something I disagreed with. I'd never write it. My own sister is a single mother who's done an amazing job raising my niece. I found 3 more recent posts I hadn't written. One attacking stay-at-home dads, one shaming parents who used screens as babysitters, and one calling adoptive parents second-choice caregivers. Each post was inflammatory enough to anger different groups within my community, but written competently enough to sound like they could have come from me on a bad day. I checked my blog's back end. The controversial posts were published during times I wasn't at my computer, late nights, or when I was at work. Someone had my login credentials and was posting inflammatory content designed to destroy my reputation while making it look like I'd simply gotten mean or shown my true colors. My blog's IP logs showed the fake posts came from my home network. I installed monitoring software and discovered my husband Richard, 51, and our daughters Claire, 21, and Isabel, 19, had been sharing my login to post controversial content under my name for 4 months. Their group chat revealed the strategy. Richard wrote, "Posted another one about working mothers today. Should get good engagement." Claire added, "People are starting to turn on her. A few more inflammatory posts and sponsors will drop her." Isabel contributed, "I made this one extra judgmental about different parenting styles. Someone will definitely be offended." They'd been deliberately writing posts that would alienate different segments of my audience. They'd research hot-button parenting topics, take extreme positions I'd never take, and publish them under my name. Each post damaged relationships with followers while being plausible enough that people believed I'd written them. The motivation was clear from their messages. They resented the blog. Richard complained I spent too much time on it and shared too much about our family. Claire was embarrassed that her friends knew about our family dynamics through my posts. Isabel hated that I wrote about parenting teenagers, even though I'd always protected their privacy and never shared identifiable details about them specifically. Instead of asking me to change my approach or set boundaries, they decided to destroy the blog by making it toxic, ensuring sponsors dropped me and followers left. I was scheduled to keynote a major blogging conference next month with 800 attendees, bloggers, brands, and media. My topic was building authentic community through vulnerability. Richard, Claire, and Isabel had planned to attend to support me, though they'd been actively destroying what they were supposedly supporting. I documented everything: the posts I didn't write, the IP logs, their coordinating messages, the timeline of my reputation decline matching their posting schedule. I contacted the conference organizers and several brands who'd started pulling back from partnerships, explaining what had been happening. At the conference, I gave my keynote as scheduled. I talked about authenticity and community, then explained those values were being tested because someone had been posting inflammatory content under my name for months. I displayed the fake posts on conference screens alongside my real content, showing the difference in tone and values. I revealed the posts came from my own family, my husband and daughters, who'd been sabotaging my blog because they resented the time and attention it took. I showed their coordination messages, planning which controversial topics to tackle next, celebrating when sponsors dropped me, and discussing how many more inflammatory posts it would take to kill the blog. The audience was stunned. Many had noticed my recent controversial content and stopped following. Brand representatives who'd pulled partnerships confirmed they'd been disturbed by the inflammatory posts I supposedly wrote. I showed proof those posts came from family members, deliberately trying to destroy my reputation and income. Richard tried to claim they were genuinely concerned about our privacy. I responded that posting fake inflammatory content under my name wasn't protecting privacy. It was sabotaging my livelihood and reputation. Claire said she was embarrassed by the blog, and I pointed out she'd caused far more embarrassment by impersonating me to post hateful content. Several bloggers in the audience stood up and shared they'd unfollowed me or spoken negatively about me based on the controversial posts, and they felt manipulated, learning my own family had been sabotaging me. Brand partners approached me afterward to discuss restoring relationships now that they understood the inflammatory content wasn't actually from me. My family left humiliated. The blog has been rebuilding with my real content, though trust with followers takes time to restore. Richard and I are separated while determining if the marriage can survive him actively working to destroy something I'd built. Claire and Isabel have apologized, but don't fully understand the damage they caused beyond just posts. Some think I should have confronted them privately, but the conference where I was supposed to speak about authentic community building seemed like the right moment to reveal how that authenticity had been undermined by family sabotage. The keynote that was supposed to celebrate my blogging success became the explanation of why that success had been declining and who was responsible. I discovered my family has been sabotaging my beehives to force me to quit beekeeping. I, 48, became a certified beekeeper 3 years ago after my corporate position was eliminated. What started as a therapeutic hobby during unemployment became a passion and small business. I maintain 6 hives on our property, sell honey at farmers markets, and teach beginner beekeeping classes through the county extension office. The work is meditative, the bees are fascinating, and the income helps while I job search for positions in my field. 5 months ago, my hives started having problems. Colonies that had been thriving would suddenly show signs of stress or disease. I'd find frames disturbed when I knew I'd left them properly arranged. Equipment would be in the wrong places. Twice, I discovered my hives had been opened and left improperly closed, exposing the colonies to weather and predators. Then, colonies started dying. I lost 2 complete hives in 3 months, unusual for someone with my experience and care routine. The County Beekeeping Association sent an inspector who found evidence of poor hive management. Frames installed backwards, improper spacing, contaminated sugar water feeders. I insisted I hadn't made those mistakes, but the inspector documented them, and my certification was flagged for review. My farmers market sales dropped after customers complained about finding debris in honey jars. Dead bees, wax fragments, even a dead spider once. I'm meticulous about filtering and jarring, but somehow contaminated jars kept reaching customers. My reputation at the market suffered quickly. The market coordinator suggested I take a break until I resolved my quality control issues. Last Saturday, I installed a trail camera near my hives after finding them disturbed again. The footage showed my husband, Derek, 50, opening hives during times I was teaching classes, deliberately disturbing frames and removing protective equipment improperly. I checked footage from multiple angles and dates. Derek had been systematically damaging my hives for months, opening them incorrectly, disturbing the colonies, contaminating equipment, and even introducing mites and foreign substances that harmed the bees. My daughter Alexis, 20, appeared in footage adding debris to already jarred honey before I took it to the market. I found their planning messages. Derek wrote, "Opened 2 hives today while she was at her class. Made sure to mess up the frames so the inspector will think she doesn't know what she's doing." Alexis added, "Put stuff in 3 honey jars. She'll get more complaints at the farmer's market." My son Trevor, 18, contributed, "Good. Maybe she'll finally admit this bee thing is ridiculous and get a real job." They'd been killing my bees and destroying my beekeeping reputation because they thought it was an embarrassing hobby for someone with my education and former corporate position. Derek complained in messages that neighbors asked about the bee situation, and he hated explaining I was a beekeeper. Alexis said her friends thought it was weird. Trevor was tired of people asking if I was that bee lady. They wanted me to quit beekeeping and either find another corporate job or just stay home quietly. The systematic destruction of my hives, contamination of my products, and sabotage of my certification was their way of forcing me out without admitting they were embarrassed by my profession. The harm they'd caused was extensive. 2 dead colonies representing 60,000 plus bees, contaminated products that could have caused allergic reactions, and reputational damage in the beekeeping and farmers market communities. They'd killed living creatures and risked consumer safety because they found my work embarrassing. The county was hosting their annual agricultural fair next month with 800 attendees: farmers, hobbyists, extension office representatives, and community members. I'd been scheduled to give a demonstration on beginner beekeeping and was competing in the honey competition. My family said they'd attend to finally see what all this bee stuff is about. I showed the extension office everything: the footage of Derek sabotaging hives, Alexis contaminating products, their coordination messages, and documentation of the deliberate harm they'd caused. The county was horrified and offered me time during the fair's opening ceremony to address threats facing backyard beekeepers. At the fair, I explained that beekeepers face many challenges, but sometimes the biggest threat doesn't come from mites or disease, but from family members who sabotage hives because they're embarrassed by the profession. I displayed the trail camera footage showing Derek deliberately damaging my hives, opening them improperly, and introducing contaminants that harmed colonies. I showed Alexis adding debris to honey jars destined for customers, creating safety hazards. I revealed their messages, coordinating sabotage, and celebrating when colonies died or customers complained. The audience of agricultural professionals and beekeeping enthusiasts was horrified. They understood the work required to maintain healthy hives and the harm caused by deliberate interference. The Beekeeping Association immediately reinstated my certification after understanding the documented problems were sabotage. Several farmers market customers apologized for doubting my quality control. The County Agricultural Extension issued a statement about the case, using it as an example of how malicious interference can damage small agricultural operations. Derek, Alexis, and Trevor tried to claim they thought beekeeping was dangerous and wanted me to quit for safety reasons. A master beekeeper in the audience responded that properly managed hives posed minimal risk and that sabotaging them actually created the dangerous conditions they claimed to fear. Derek and I are divorcing. I can't stay with someone who killed my bees and destroyed my work. Alexis and Trevor are living with their father while our relationships remain broken. The beekeeping community has supported me with replacement colonies and equipment. My hives are rebuilding with proper security measures, preventing further interference. Some think I should have confronted them privately, but the agricultural fair celebrating local farming and beekeeping seemed like the right venue to reveal how my beekeeping had been systematically destroyed by family members who valued their social comfort over the lives of my bees and the safety of my customers. The fair where I was supposed to demonstrate beekeeping basics became the moment everyone learned how my hives had been deliberately sabotaged, and the hobby my family tried to end by killing bees continues with stronger colonies and better protection. I discovered my family has been filing false reports to remove me from volunteer firefighting. I, 45, have been a volunteer firefighter with our rural fire department for 4 years. After my corporate career ended during industry layoffs, I took my severance and decided to give back to our community. The training was intense, but I passed all requirements and became a certified firefighter. I respond to calls 2 to 3 times per week: structure fires, vehicle accidents, medical assists, and brush fires. It's meaningful work that genuinely helps people. 8 weeks ago, the fire chief called me into his office with serious concerns. The department had received reports questioning my fitness for duty, anonymous complaints claiming I'd been slow to respond to calls, that I'd made errors during training exercises, that other firefighters had safety concerns about working with me. I was shocked because none of this matched my actual performance reviews or feedback from my crew. Then, more reports arrived. Someone filed a complaint with the state fire marshal claiming I'd violated equipment protocols. Another report suggested I'd shown up to a call smelling of alcohol, an extremely serious accusation that would end my firefighting career immediately if substantiated. An anonymous tip to the department suggested I'd been discussing confidential patient information from medical calls, violating HIPAA. Each report required investigation. My status was suspended during reviews. That meant when calls came in, I had to stay home while my crew responded shorthanded. In rural areas, losing even one firefighter affects response capabilities. The department had to bring in volunteers from neighboring districts to cover my shifts. A fellow firefighter named Joel mentioned he'd received a Facebook message from someone claiming to be my concerned neighbor, warning that I was becoming unreliable and taking firefighting too seriously at my age. The message included details about my training schedule that only someone in my household would know. I requested copies of all complaints filed against me and noticed patterns in submission times and details. The reports came during hours when my wife Carla, 44, my son Philip, 20, and my daughter Sienna, 18, were all home. The complaints referenced specific calls and training sessions, but included details that weren't public. Information only accessible through my shift calendar and department communications I'd shared at home. I installed monitoring on our home computer and discovered they'd been accessing my fire department portal using saved passwords. They'd been reading incident reports, shift schedules, and training notifications, then using that information to craft credible-sounding complaints that would trigger mandatory investigations. Their family group chat revealed everything. Carla wrote, "Filed another anonymous report about him being slow to respond. If we establish a pattern of reliability issues, they'll have to remove him." Philip added, "Called the fire marshal's office pretending to be a concerned citizen reporting equipment violations." Sienna contributed, "Sent the HIPAA complaint. That's serious enough they'll have to investigate thoroughly. They wanted me removed from firefighting because they thought it was dangerous and inappropriate for my age." Carla complained in messages that she was terrified every time I responded to calls. Philip said his girlfriend's parents thought it was weird a 45-year-old office worker was playing firefighter. Sienna hated worrying about me during structure fire calls. Rather than discussing their concerns or asking me to reconsider, they'd been filing false reports designed to get me removed for cause, creating a record of supposed incompetence, safety violations, and ethical breaches that would justify termination and prevent me from volunteering with other departments. The accusations they'd made were serious. The alcohol allegation could have criminal implications. The HIPAA violation could affect my ability to work in any healthcare-adjacent field. They weren't just trying to make me quit. They were creating a false record that could permanently damage my reputation and career options. The county was hosting an annual volunteer fire department appreciation ceremony next month with 600 attendees. Firefighters, emergency services personnel, county officials, and community members. I was scheduled to receive recognition for 4 years of service, despite being under investigation for the false reports. My family said they'd attend to finally understand what this firefighting commitment involves. I documented everything and showed it to the fire chief and county fire marshal. The false complaints matched to my family's coordination messages, proof they'd accessed confidential department information, and evidence that every serious allegation came from them using different submission methods to appear like multiple concerned parties. The fire marshal was particularly disturbed that someone had filed false reports about alcohol and HIPAA violations, allegations that trigger mandatory reporting to state agencies and criminal investigations. The department immediately cleared my record and offered time during the ceremony to address false reporting. At the ceremony, I explained that volunteer firefighters face many risks: smoke, heat, structural collapse, vehicle extrication hazards. But sometimes, the biggest threat comes from family members who file false reports because they think you're too old or too scared to let you continue. I displayed their coordination messages planning which violations to report, celebrated when investigations suspended my status, and discussed which allegations would be most damaging. I revealed that my alcohol allegation, HIPAA violation report, and safety complaints were all filed by my own family members who wanted me removed but chose to create a false record rather than express their concerns directly. Several county fire officials confirmed that false reporting to emergency services is a crime, and that the specific allegations my family made had wasted investigative resources and temporarily reduced rural fire coverage. My crew confirmed they'd been short-handed during my suspension for completely fabricated reasons. Carla tried to claim they were genuinely afraid for my safety. The fire chief responded that families of firefighters often have concerns, but there are support systems and conversations available, not false reporting campaigns that damage firefighters' careers and affect community safety. Philip admitted they just wanted me to quit, and multiple firefighters explained that filing false reports endangered everyone by depleting volunteer resources through manufactured investigations. The county fire marshal referred the case to law enforcement for false reporting charges. Carla, Philip, and Sienna face potential criminal charges and fines for filing false emergency services complaints. My marriage is ending after Carla filed false allegations serious enough to trigger criminal investigations. Philip and Sienna are estranged while facing legal consequences for their actions. I've been fully reinstated with all false reports expunged from my record. The firefighting community has been supportive. Many volunteers shared stories of family members who struggled with the risks involved. The ceremony where I was supposed to be honored for service became the moment everyone learned that service had been undermined by family members who chose false criminal allegations over honest conversation about their fears. Some think I should have confronted them privately, but the ceremony honoring volunteer emergency services seemed like the right venue to expose how those services can be damaged by false reporting from people who can't accept the risks volunteers knowingly take to help their communities. I discovered my family has been sabotaging my competitive ballroom dancing. I, 54, began competitive ballroom dancing 4 years ago after my partner of 10 years, Claire, convinced me to try a beginner class. Dancing became my passion. I'd always been stiff and self-conscious about my body, but learning to move with confidence at this age was transformative. Claire and I now compete in regional amateur competitions in the adult division, and while we rarely place first, we've earned several top 5 finishes and love the community. 3 months ago, things started going wrong before competitions. Costumes would be missing buttons or have small tears I'd discover right before performing. My dance shoes, which I kept in my competition bag, would have loosened heel screws that made them unsafe to wear. Once my competition schedule was accidentally deleted from my phone, causing me to miss my call time. Then, during a competition, I felt a sharp pain in my knee mid-routine. I'd iced it that morning using a cold pack from our freezer, but later realized the pack had been contaminated with something that caused a chemical burn, weakening my knee enough that a standard pivot movement injured it. I had to withdraw from that competition and the next 2 while healing. Claire started noticing that my practice clothes would smell strange after I'd left them in my gym bag, like someone had sprayed them with something. My water bottle tasted off once and made me nauseous before a competition. Small things kept happening that individually seemed like bad luck, but collectively felt like a pattern. Last week, I installed a camera in our mudroom where I keep my dance equipment. The footage showed my wife Patricia, 52, tampering with my shoe heels. My son Eric, 26, was captured spraying something into my practice clothes. My daughter-in-law Jenna, 25, appeared damaging costume seams with small scissors. I reviewed weeks of footage and found systematic sabotage. Patricia had been loosening shoe screws before every competition, creating instability that could cause injury. Eric contaminated my water bottles and applied irritants to practice clothes that would make me uncomfortable during rehearsals. Jenna carefully damaged costumes in ways that wouldn't be immediately obvious, but would fail under performance stress. I found their coordination messages. Patricia wrote, "Loosened his shoes again. Maybe he'll finally hurt himself enough to quit this ridiculous dancing nonsense." Eric added, "Put the muscle irritant in his practice bag. Should make rehearsals uncomfortable." Jenna contributed, "Cut 3 more costume seams. He'll look unprofessional when they come apart during competition." Their motivation was clear. They were embarrassed that I, at 54, was competitive ballroom dancing. Patricia wrote that when her friends asked about my hobbies, she was humiliated to say, "competitive dancing," for a middle-aged man. Eric complained that his coworkers laughed when they learned his dad did dance sport. Jenna said it was creepy that someone my age wore those costumes and moved that way publicly. They wanted me to quit dancing but knew I loved it. So they'd been creating injuries, equipment failures, and performance disasters to make continuing impossible. The knee injury that had sidelined me for 6 weeks wasn't from poor technique. It was from their chemical sabotage weakening the joint before a competition where they knew I'd be doing demanding movements. The damage extended beyond physical harm. Missing competitions affected my competitive standing and partnership with Claire. Other dancers started questioning my reliability when equipment failures caused delays or withdrawals. My confidence suffered as I wondered if I was too old for this activity after all. The Regional Ballroom Championship was next month, with 600 spectators, dancers, judges, coaches, and enthusiasts. Claire and I had qualified for the adult amateur standard division. It would be our biggest competition yet. My family said they'd finally attend one of my competitions to see what it's actually like. I showed my dance studio owners and competition organizers everything: the footage of family members sabotaging equipment, their coordination messages, documentation that my knee injury resulted from their contaminated cold pack. The organization offered time during the championship opening ceremony to address competitor safety and sabotage. At the championship, I took the floor during the opening remarks and explained that competitive dancers face many challenges, but sometimes the biggest obstacles come from family members who find the sport embarrassing. I displayed the footage showing Patricia loosening my shoe heels, Eric contaminating my water and practice gear, and Jenna damaging my costumes. I showed their messages planning sabotage before each competition, celebrating when I got injured, and discussing how many more failures would make me quit. I revealed the chemical burn that had caused my knee injury was deliberate contamination by my own family, because they thought a 54-year-old man shouldn't compete in ballroom dancing. The ballroom community was horrified. Several judges confirmed they'd witnessed my equipment failures and suspected age-related decline rather than sabotage. Claire explained that our partnership had nearly ended because the constant problems made me seem unreliable. A sports medicine specialist in attendance confirmed that chemical contamination could absolutely cause the type of injury I'd sustained. Patricia tried to claim they thought dancing was too physically demanding for my age. A 68-year-old champion dancer in the audience responded that age-appropriate conditioning makes competitive dancing safe at any age, and that sabotaging equipment actually created the dangers they claimed to fear. Eric said they were just embarrassed, and multiple dancers responded that there was nothing embarrassing about pursuing athletic artistry at any age. My family left in disgrace. Claire and I performed in the championship and placed third in our division. My best finish yet, achieved with properly maintained equipment and no sabotage. Patricia and I are divorcing after she deliberately injured me to force me to quit something I love. Eric and Jenna are estranged from most of the family, who can't forgive them for causing deliberate physical harm. The ballroom community has been incredibly supportive. Other adult division dancers shared their own stories of family members finding their competitive dancing inappropriate or embarrassing. The championship, where I was supposed to prove I could still compete, became the moment everyone learned how my competing had been systematically sabotaged by family members who valued their social comfort over my safety and passion. Some think I should have confronted them privately, but the championship celebrating competitive ballroom dancing seemed like the right venue to expose how my dancing had been undermined through deliberate physical sabotage by people who thought I was too old for the sport. I discovered my family has been sabotaging my grief support group to make me quit. I, 46, have been facilitating a grief support group for parents who've lost children for the past 8 years. I started it after my son Nathan died in a car accident when he was 16. The grief nearly destroyed me, and finding a support community of people who understood that specific pain saved my life. When I was ready, I began facilitating groups for others navigating the same devastating loss. 3 months ago, I noticed people were leaving the group after only a few sessions instead of staying for the usual 6 to 8 week cycle. Parents who seemed to connect deeply during meetings would suddenly stop attending without explanation. When I'd reach out to check on them, they'd give vague excuses about the group not being the right fit or needing a different approach. This was unusual. The group typically had strong retention because finding others who understand this specific grief is rare. Last week, a woman named Jennifer, who'd stopped coming after 2 sessions, reached out to apologize. She said she felt terrible about how she'd left and wanted to explain. She'd been told by someone claiming to be a concerned former group member that I was stuck in my grief and romanticizing loss in ways that were harmful to others' healing. This person said I encouraged dependency rather than growth, and that several parents had gotten worse under my facilitation. Jennifer eventually realized these warnings didn't match her experience in the actual sessions, which is why she was reaching out. She showed me the messages. They came from an anonymous email address, but included specific details about the group's format and my facilitation style that only someone close to me would know. I started investigating. I reached out to other parents who'd suddenly left the group. 3 responded and shared similar stories. They'd been contacted by someone claiming to have inside knowledge about the group, warning them that staying would prevent their healing. The messages referenced my personal loss and suggested I was using the group to keep myself trapped in grief, rather than genuinely helping others move forward. I traced the anonymous email address through technical help and found it was created and accessed from my home network. Someone in my house had been systematically contacting group members to drive them away. I installed monitoring software on our home computer and discovered my husband, Paul, 48, and our daughters Emma, 22, and Sophie, 20, had been sharing the account to send these messages. I found their group chat discussing their strategy. Paul wrote, "Mom needs to stop running that grief group. It's been 8 years. She's obsessed with Nathan's death, and this group keeps her stuck there. If we can get enough people to leave, maybe she'll finally close it down and move on." Emma added, "I told that new woman the group was unhealthy. Mom talks about Nathan constantly, and it's like she wants to stay sad forever." They'd been coordinating for months, identifying new group members through my calendar and materials I'd leave around the house, then contacting them anonymously with warnings designed to make them quit. They'd research enough about grief support to sound credible, then twist my facilitation approach to sound unhealthy. The motivation became clear through their messages. They wanted me to stop facilitating the group because they believed it kept me focused on Nathan's death. They thought if the group ended, I'd move on, and the family could get back to normal. They viewed my continued grief work as wallowing rather than healing, and saw the group as enabling me to stay stuck, rather than recognizing it as my way of honoring Nathan while helping others. Our community center was hosting a volunteer appreciation event next month, honoring people who facilitate support programs. I'd been nominated for recognition after 8 years of grief group facilitation. Paul and the girls had said they'd attend to support me, though I now knew they'd been actively sabotaging the very work being honored. I prepared carefully. I contacted all the parents who'd left my group after being warned away, explained what I'd discovered, and invited them to the event. Most were horrified to learn they'd been manipulated by my own family and agreed to attend. At the event, I was called up to receive recognition for my grief support work. Paul, Emma, and Sophie sat in the audience looking supportive. I accepted the award and then explained that someone had been systematically sabotaging the group by contacting members anonymously and warning them to leave. I displayed the anonymous messages on the venue screens, showing the warnings about me being stuck in grief and the group being harmful. Then I revealed the messages came from my own family, my husband and daughters, who'd been trying to force me to stop facilitating because they wanted me to move on from Nathan's death. Paul tried to claim they were genuinely concerned about my well-being. I responded that undermining grief support for vulnerable parents wasn't concern, it was cruelty. Emma said they just wanted the old mom back. And I explained that I would never be the person I was before Nathan died, but I'd built a life honoring his memory while helping others, which they'd been destroying. Several parents from my group stood up and shared how the warnings had confused them, made them doubt whether seeking support was healthy, and delayed their healing. One woman said she'd isolated herself for 2 months after leaving the group based on the warnings, making her grief worse. The community center director was horrified that volunteer work helping grieving parents had been sabotaged by family members. Paul, Emma, and Sophie left humiliated. The group has rebuilt with former members returning and new parents joining. My family moved out temporarily while we decide if the marriage and relationships can be repaired. Some think I should have confronted them privately, but the event honoring my grief work seemed like the right moment to reveal how that work had been betrayed by those closest to me. I discovered my family has been sabotaging my YouTube channel with false copyright claims. I, 48, started a YouTube channel called Second Act Adventures 3 years ago, documenting my journey learning new skills after early retirement from banking. What began as filming myself learning to skateboard at 45 evolved into a channel about embracing challenges in middle age. I've documented learning parkour, rock climbing, surfing, and motorcycle riding. My audience of 380,000 subscribers appreciates seeing someone my age attempt things typically associated with younger people. 10 weeks ago, my channel started having serious problems. Videos I'd uploaded would be taken down within hours for copyright violations, despite containing only my original content. My account received community guideline strikes for videos that violated no policies. Twice, my channel was temporarily suspended, causing me to lose monetization and miss upload schedules that my consistent audience expected. Then, subscriber counts started dropping dramatically. My comment sections filled with hostile messages from new accounts claiming I was fake, that I used stunt doubles, or that I was too old and should stop embarrassing myself. These weren't typical internet trolls. The comments referenced specific details about my filming locations and personal life that weren't public information. Brands that had been interested in sponsorships started backing away. An outdoor gear company canceled a partnership deal, mentioning they'd received concerning messages about my authenticity and professionalism. A talent agency I'd been in talks with stopped returning emails after someone contacted them with allegations about my character. My video editor mentioned receiving a DM from someone claiming to be my business partner, instructing him to upload a previous draft with mistakes still in it, rather than my final polished version. He thought it was strange, but wanted to check with me first. I investigated my YouTube account security and found unauthorized access from devices in my home network. Someone had been logging into my account, filing false copyright claims against my own videos, and flagging my content for bogus policy violations. The copyright claims were being filed in my wife Melissa's name and our kids' names without their knowledge. I discovered my wife Melissa, 46, son Austin, 22, and daughter Jade, 19, had been accessing my account using saved passwords. They'd been filing fraudulent copyright strikes against my own content, reporting videos to YouTube for fake violations, and creating dozens of fake accounts to leave negative comments that would damage my reputation and discourage viewers. Their family chat revealed everything. Melissa wrote, "Filed 3 more copyright claims on his videos. Should get his account suspended if we keep this up." Austin added, "Made 10 fake accounts and left comments saying he's too old for this stuff. Other commenters are starting to agree." Jade contributed, "Messaged that gear company pretending to be a concerned viewer. Told them his videos promote unsafe behavior for his age group. They wanted my channel shut down because they were deeply embarrassed by my content." Melissa complained that her book club friends found my videos and now asked her about my stunts. Austin said his colleagues discovered the channel and mocked him for having a dad who skateboarded and did parkour at 48. Jade was mortified that her boyfriend's parents saw videos of me learning to surf and asked if I was going through something. The sabotage was sophisticated. They'd researched YouTube's copyright system specifically to abuse it against me, created networks of fake accounts to manufacture negative sentiment, and impersonated business partners to interfere with my production workflow. They knew false copyright strikes could get a channel permanently terminated after 3 strikes. The financial impact was real. I'd lost months of monetization during suspensions, missed sponsorship deals worth thousands of dollars, and spent hours dealing with false claims instead of creating content. More painfully, my audience was confused and disappointed by inconsistent uploads and content quality issues they thought were my fault. VidCon, the massive YouTube creator convention, was next month with 2,000 creators and 75,000 attendees. I'd been selected for a panel called It's Never Too Late, Creating Content After 40, alongside other successful middle-aged creators. My family said they'd finally attend to see what this YouTube thing is really about. I documented everything and showed it to YouTube's creator support team and VidCon organizers. The fraudulent copyright claims filed from my family's accounts, their coordination messages, the fake viewer accounts they'd created, and proof that every strike and suspension was manufactured sabotage. YouTube's legal team was particularly interested since false copyright claims violate federal law. At VidCon, I participated in my panel discussion about creating content later in life. Melissa, Austin, and Jade sat in the audience of 800 people. After the panel, during my scheduled meet and greet, I addressed the crowd and explained that middle-aged creators face unique challenges. But sometimes, those challenges come from family members who file false copyright claims because they're embarrassed by your content. I displayed their coordination messages on the convention screens, showed the fraudulent copyright strikes they'd filed against my own original content, revealed the networks of fake accounts they'd created to damage my reputation, and explained that my channel suspensions and sponsorship losses were entirely due to systematic sabotage by family members who thought a 48-year-old shouldn't skateboard or learn parkour. Several other creators on my panel confirmed they'd faced family skepticism, but never deliberate sabotage. YouTube representatives present explained that false copyright claims are a serious legal violation that damages creators' livelihoods. Multiple viewers from my channel were in the audience and expressed shock that the upload problems and negative comments they'd witnessed were manufactured by my own family. Melissa tried to claim they were concerned about my safety doing dangerous activities at my age. A 52-year-old skateboarding creator on my panel responded that age-appropriate risk assessment makes these activities safe, and that filing false legal claims doesn't protect anyone. It just destroys livelihoods. Austin admitted they were embarrassed, and several creators responded that there was nothing embarrassing about pursuing passions and inspiring others regardless of age. YouTube is pursuing legal action against my family for fraudulent DMCA claims, a federal violation. Melissa, Austin, and Jade face potential criminal charges and civil liability for filing false copyright strikes. My channel has been fully restored with all fraudulent strikes removed. I'm divorcing Melissa after she violated federal law to destroy something I'd built. Austin and Jade are estranged while facing legal consequences. The creator community has been incredibly supportive. My subscriber count has actually increased as the story spread, with viewers appreciating my perseverance. Several brands have reached out with renewed sponsorship interest. The convention where I was supposed to inspire other middle-aged creators became the moment everyone learned my content creation had been systematically attacked through false legal claims by family members who valued their social comfort over my creative expression and income. Some think I should have confronted them privately, but VidCon seemed like the right venue to expose how content creators can be destroyed by those who find their creative pursuits embarrassing rather than inspiring. I discovered my family has been sabotaging my attempts to date after my divorce. I, 47, got divorced 2 years ago after my ex-husband's infidelity ended our 22-year marriage. It was devastating, but I've worked hard to rebuild my life and confidence. 6 months ago, I felt ready to start dating again. My 3 kids, Emma, 19, Tyler, 17, and Sophie, 15, said they were supportive, encouraging me to get back out there and be happy again. I tried online dating and met a few nice men. Each time, things would start promisingly. Good conversations, a few dates, real connection developing. Then, suddenly they'd ghost me or send a polite message saying it wasn't working out. This happened 4 times in 5 months. Each man seemed genuinely interested until abruptly they weren't. The last one, David, actually explained himself when I asked what changed. He said he'd enjoyed our dates but got concerning information from someone claiming to be my close friend, warning him about my emotional instability and history of dramatic behavior during my marriage. This mysterious friend said I wasn't ready to date and had a pattern of becoming obsessive. David apologized but said the warnings were too specific to ignore. I was confused and hurt. I don't have friends who'd say those things because they're not true. I asked David for more details. He showed me messages from someone using a fake social media profile, someone who knew details about me, where I worked, my kids' names, even what I'd worn on our second date. Whoever contacted him had been watching me closely enough to seem credible. I created a fake dating profile myself and matched with a decent-looking profile. After a few messages establishing rapport, I mentioned I'd recently matched with someone interesting named Jennifer Morrison, my name, and asked if he'd heard of her. Within 2 days, I received messages on that fake account warning me about Jennifer, that she was emotionally unstable, not over her ex, and had issues with her kids that made her dramatic and difficult. The messages came from a new account, but they included photos. Photos of me that I'd never posted publicly. Pictures taken at home, candid shots from my living room and kitchen. Someone in my house had been taking these photos without my knowledge and using them to create credible-looking warnings to men I was dating. I checked my home computer and found a folder of photos of me taken secretly over months, getting ready for dates, sitting on my couch, cooking dinner. Emma's laptop had the same folder, plus screenshots of my dating profile and conversations. When I checked Tyler and Sophie's devices, I found the group chat where all three had been coordinating. Emma wrote, "Mom has another date Friday. I'll message this guy like we did with the last one." Tyler added, "I got good pictures of her looking stressed last night. Send those to make her seem unstable." Sophie contributed, "I told her I was okay with her dating, but honestly, it's gross. Dad's only been gone 2 years." They'd been systematically destroying every dating prospect for 5 months. They'd create fake social media profiles, pretending to be concerned friends, use secret photos to appear credible, and send warnings designed to make men think I was emotionally damaged, obsessive, or dishonest. They researched enough about dating red flags to make their warnings sound legitimate. My ex-husband was getting remarried next month, to the woman he'd cheated with, in fact. It was a large wedding with over 200 guests, including many people from our former married life, mutual friends who'd have to navigate the awkwardness of celebrating his new marriage while I existed as the discarded first wife. My kids had been invited and were planning to attend. I was not invited, obviously, but the wedding had become a focus of community attention since my ex was well known in town. I decided to address the sabotage at the one event where the impact of their actions would be most clear. I showed up at the wedding venue before the ceremony and asked to speak with my ex and several mutual friends who were attending. I explained that I needed to share something about our children's behavior that affected both families. I presented the evidence, the secret photos taken in my home, the fake profiles my kids created, the messages they sent to men I dated warning them away, their group chat coordinating the sabotage. I explained they'd been systematically destroying my attempts to move on and rebuild my life for 5 months while pretending to support me. Several friends were shocked. My ex was forced to confront that our children had been sabotaging my dating life while he was preparing to remarry the woman he'd cheated with. The kids arrived for the wedding and found me presenting their group chats to wedding guests, showing how they'd taken secret photos and created fake personas to ruin my relationships. Emma tried to say they were protecting me from making mistakes. I asked who'd been protecting me from the mistake of my first marriage. Tyler said they didn't want a replacement dad, and I responded I was dating men, not recruiting fathers, and they had no right to control my personal life. Sophie said seeing me with other men was weird, and I pointed out their father's bride was at the altar. The wedding proceeded, but was overshadowed by the revelation. Multiple guests approached me to apologize for not realizing what was happening. My ex was forced to address his children's behavior while celebrating his new marriage. Some people think I crashed his wedding vindictively, but I simply wanted the people who'd been part of our former life to understand why I'd remained single while he moved on. Not because I was emotionally unstable, as my kids had been telling men, but because my children had been sabotaging me. My relationship with Emma, Tyler, and Sophie is strained. They're staying with their father and his new wife while we figure out if we can rebuild trust. They damaged multiple potential relationships and made me question my own readiness to date. The dating sabotage they orchestrated for months was exposed at their father's wedding to the affair partner, making clear the double standard they'd enforced. He could move on immediately, but they'd ensure I couldn't. I discovered my family has been sabotaging my master's swimming competitions. I, 46, started competitive masters swimming 18 months ago, after my doctor suggested I needed regular exercise following a health scare. What began as lap swimming for fitness evolved into competing in regional masters meets. Masters swimming is for adults 18 plus, and the 45 to 49 age group has been welcoming and competitive. I've shaved 30 seconds off my 200-meter freestyle and won several age group medals at local meets. 6 weeks ago, I started having problems on race days. I'd feel inexplicably fatigued during warm-ups. My goggles would leak mid-race despite being fine during practice, and twice my racing suit had small tears that weren't there when I'd packed it. I'd been training consistently, but my race performances were getting worse instead of better. Then, I missed a championship meet entirely because my alarm didn't go off, even though I'd set 3 separate alarms the night before. The next meet, I arrived to find I wasn't on the entry list, despite having registered and received confirmation weeks earlier. My coach was frustrated, and other swimmers started questioning my commitment. My nutrition also became a problem. I'd experienced stomach cramping during races after eating my usual pre-race meals. My sports drinks tasted slightly off, but I'd drink them anyway, then feel nauseous during competition. My coach suggested I was overtraining, but my practice sessions were fine. Problems only appeared on competition days. Last Sunday, I forgot to bring my swim bag to practice and borrowed my daughter's phone to call home. While using it, a notification appeared from a group chat called Operation Stop Moms Swimming. The preview showed my husband writing about race day sabotage schedule. I checked the full group chat between my husband Keith, 48, my daughter Natalie, 19, and my son Connor, 17. They'd been systematically sabotaging my competition preparation for 2 months. Keith wrote, "Deleted her race entry while she was asleep. She'll show up and not be registered." Natalie added, "Put laxative in her sports drink bottle. Should hit during her race." Connor contributed, "Disabled all 3 of her alarms for tomorrow's meet." They'd been contaminating my pre-race nutrition with substances that would cause digestive issues during competition, tampering with my equipment in ways that would affect performance but not be immediately obvious, and interfering with logistics like registration and transportation to ensure I'd miss meets or perform badly. I found more sabotage evidence. Keith had been adding sleeping medication to my water bottle before important races, making me feel sluggish and slow. Natalie had been making tiny punctures in my racing suits that would expand under the stress of competition. Connor had changed my GPS settings so I'd be directed to wrong pool locations, making me late or miss meets entirely. Their motivation was clear from the messages. They were embarrassed that I, at 46, was competing in swimming competitions wearing racing suits and posting about athletic achievements. Keith complained that his coworkers saw my Facebook posts about swim meets and asked if he was having a midlife crisis letting his wife parade around in a swimsuit. Natalie said her boyfriend's parents thought it was weird a middle-aged mom did competitive swimming. Connor was tired of explaining to friends why his mom was obsessed with swimming. They wanted me to quit but knew I loved it, so they'd been making competitions miserable, causing performance failures, digestive emergencies, and logistical disasters that would make continuing seem impossible. The championship meet I'd missed wasn't because my alarms failed. They'd deliberately disabled them because they knew that meet was important to me. The State Masters Swimming Championship was next month with 800 competitors and spectators, swimmers, coaches, families, and swimming community members. I'd qualified for 3 events in my age group and had been training specifically for this meet. My family said they'd finally come watch me compete to see what this swimming thing is really about. I documented everything and showed it to my coach and the meet organizers. The sabotage coordination messages, evidence of contaminated nutrition and equipment tampering, proof that my missed meets and poor performances were deliberate family interference. The organization offered time during the opening ceremony to address competitor safety and sabotage. At the championship, I spoke during opening remarks and explained that Masters swimmers face many training challenges. But sometimes, the biggest obstacles come from family members who find adult athletic competition embarrassing. I displayed their group chat messages planning race day sabotage, Keith admitting to drugging my water, Natalie documenting suit damage, and Connor celebrating when I missed meets. I showed the timeline of my declining race performance, matching exactly with their sabotage schedule, explained that my stomach issues were from deliberate contamination, and revealed that missed meets were from disabled alarms and changed GPS settings. All because my family thought a 46-year-old woman shouldn't compete in swimming. The swimming community was outraged. Several coaches confirmed they'd seen my performance decline and suspected training issues or health problems, not realizing I was being actively poisoned before races. My age group competitors expressed shock that someone would sabotage a Masters swimmer, a demographic that celebrates athletic achievement at any age. Keith tried to claim they thought competitive swimming was unhealthy for someone my age. A 68-year-old championship swimmer in the audience responded that properly trained Masters swimming is excellent for health, and that sabotaging nutrition and equipment actually created health risks. Natalie admitted they were just embarrassed, and multiple swimmers responded that there was nothing embarrassing about pursuing athletic excellence at any age. My family left in disgrace. I competed in all 3 events and placed second in my 200-meter freestyle, my best finish yet, achieved without sabotage. Keith and I are divorcing after he literally drugged me to force me to quit something I love. Natalie and Connor are estranged, while I decide if relationships can recover from them deliberately causing physical harm through contaminated nutrition. The Masters swimming community has rallied around me. Other swimmers shared stories of family members who didn't support their athletic pursuits. Several coaches offered training support. The championship, where I was supposed to prove I still had competitive ability, became the moment everyone learned my abilities had been systematically undermined by family members who thought middle-aged women shouldn't wear racing suits and compete. Some think I should have confronted them privately, but the championship, celebrating adult athletic achievement, seemed like the right venue to expose how my competing had been sabotaged through deliberate poisoning and equipment tampering by people who valued their social comfort over my safety and passion. I discovered my family has been filing false reports to remove me from search and rescue. I, 51, have been a certified volunteer with Mountain County Search and Rescue for 7 years. After surviving a hiking accident that required rescue when I was 43, I trained to become a volunteer helping others in similar situations. I respond to calls for lost hikers, injured climbers, and missing persons in our regional wilderness areas. The work is physically demanding and sometimes emotionally difficult, but it's deeply meaningful. 4 months ago, the SAR coordinator pulled me aside with concerns. They'd received reports questioning my physical capability, anonymous tips suggesting I was too slow on recent operations, that I'd struggled with terrain, that other team members had to compensate for my declining fitness. I was confused because I'd maintained rigorous training standards and had no issues keeping up during actual rescues. Then more concerns arrived. Someone reported I'd left equipment improperly stored after an operation, creating safety risks for the next deployment. Another report claimed I'd failed to follow protocol during a search, potentially endangering the team. Each report was detailed enough to require investigation, and my team status was suspended pending review. I was devastated. Search and rescue had become core to my identity. Missing weekend operations meant people in genuine distress might not get the help they needed. My team was short-staffed, and losing a trained member created gaps in coverage. Last week, a newer volunteer named Marcus mentioned he'd received a Facebook message from someone claiming to be my concerned friend, warning that I was pushing myself too hard, despite obvious physical decline, and that continuing would be dangerous for everyone. The message included details about my recent operations that only someone close to me would know. I traced the Facebook profile back through mutual connections and discovered it was created by my son Brandon, 23. I checked other anonymous reports filed with SAR and found they'd been submitted through channels accessible to anyone: online forms, phone tips, emails. I cross-referenced submission times with family schedules and found patterns. I installed monitoring on our home computer and discovered my wife Monica, 52, Brandon, and my daughter Shay, 20, had been coordinating to file reports that would get me removed from SAR. Monica wrote, "Called in another anonymous concern about him being too slow. If we establish a pattern of declining physical ability, they'll have to remove him for liability reasons." Brandon added, "I'll message some of the newer volunteers warning them to watch out for his mistakes." Shay contributed, "Found the equipment inspection form online. I'll submit a complaint about improper storage." They'd been systematically creating a false record of declining capability and safety violations. They'd research SAR protocols enough to make their reports seem credible, file complaints from different sources to appear like multiple concerned parties, and target issues that would force mandatory investigation. The damage was real. During my suspension, the team was down a qualified member for 3 operations. One search took longer than optimal, partly because they were short-staffed. My reputation among teammates who didn't know me well was affected. Some wondered if the complaints had merit. Their motivation was clear from messages. They wanted me to quit SAR because they found it dangerous and time-consuming. Monica wrote that she hated worrying about me on rescue operations. Brandon said his girlfriend thought it was weird his dad did extreme rescue stuff at his age. Shay complained about missing family weekends when I was on call. They'd decided my volunteer work was inappropriate for my age and family situation, but rather than discussing concerns, they'd manufactured evidence of incompetence and declining ability to force SAR to remove me for everyone's safety. The Regional Search and Rescue Organization was hosting their annual training symposium next month with 300 attendees, volunteers from multiple counties, emergency services coordinators, and wilderness safety experts. I'd been scheduled to lead a workshop on equipment maintenance before my suspension. My family said they'd attend to finally understand what I do out there. I showed SAR leadership everything: the coordinated false reports, the fake social media profiles, their planning messages, and evidence that every complaint during my suspension had come from my family members using different submission methods to appear like multiple sources. The organization immediately reinstated me and offered time during the opening session to address false reporting issues. At the symposium, I explained that SAR volunteers face many risks in the wilderness, but sometimes threats come from closer to home. I revealed that my 4-month suspension was based entirely on false reports filed by my own family members who thought I was too old for rescue work and wanted me to quit. I displayed their coordination messages, the fake Facebook profiles warning volunteers about me, and the anonymous reports matched to times when they had access to submit them. I explained that while I was suspended based on manufactured concerns, real operations were short-staffed, and actual missing persons faced longer response times. Several SAR coordinators from other counties stood up, expressing concern about false reporting vulnerabilities. Marcus confirmed he'd received warnings about me from fake profiles. My team leader stated that legitimate safety concerns are critical, but false reports waste resources and damage qualified volunteers. Monica tried to claim they were genuinely worried about my safety during dangerous rescues. A mountain rescue specialist in the audience responded that trained SAR volunteers are statistically very safe, and that manufacturing false capability concerns actually creates safety risks by depleting qualified teams. Brandon said they just wanted me home on weekends, and multiple volunteers pointed out that SAR duty is voluntary service that saves lives. The organization implemented better verification protocols for anonymous complaints. My family is banned from SAR facilities and events. Monica and I are separated while deciding if our marriage can survive her actively trying to end work that saves lives. Brandon and Shay have apologized, but still don't fully grasp that their embarrassment about my volunteer work potentially delayed help for people in genuine distress. I've resumed full SAR duties with my record cleared. The symposium where I was supposed to teach equipment maintenance became the moment everyone learned how false family complaints had nearly ended my capability to help rescue others. Some think I should have handled it privately, but the gathering of rescue professionals seemed like the right venue to expose how volunteer emergency services can be undermined by family members who find the work inappropriate rather than honorable. I discovered my family has been jamming my amateur radio contest signals. I, 52, have been a licensed amateur radio operator for 5 years. After my brother died unexpectedly, and I found myself isolated during the pandemic, I got my ham radio license and joined the local amateur radio club. What began as learning emergency communication skills evolved into competing in amateur radio contests, timed events where operators make as many contacts with stations worldwide as possible. I'm not an expert, but I've steadily improved and won several regional contests in my license class. 3 months ago, my contest performances started failing mysteriously. During competitions, I'd experience severe interference on frequencies I was using, loud signals that would override incoming transmissions, making it impossible to complete contacts. I'd switch frequencies only to encounter the same interference minutes later. My contact count dropped from 200 plus per contest to barely finishing 50. Then, equipment started malfunctioning during contests. My antenna tuner would lose calibration mid-competition, despite working perfectly during non-contest operating. My microphone would cut out randomly, forcing me to miss potential contacts while troubleshooting. My logging software crashed twice during major contests, losing hours of recorded contacts. Other radio operators started questioning my station setup. One competitor suggested my equipment was generating spurious emissions that were interfering with others, a serious accusation in amateur radio. The club contest coordinator mentioned receiving complaints about unusual signals coming from my call sign during competitions. Last weekend, I was monitoring frequencies before a contest when I heard a familiar voice on the interference signal. My son Tyler, 23, was laughing in the background as someone deliberately transmitted noise over a frequency I'd just announced I was using. I investigated my home radio setup and found a second transmitter hidden in our attic, positioned to interfere with my antenna. It was a cheap handheld radio modified to transmit continuously on frequencies I typically used during contests. The modifications required technical knowledge. Someone had researched how to create maximum interference. I checked our home network and found my contest calendar had been accessed from my wife Angela's laptop and my daughter Brooke's computer. They'd been monitoring which contests I planned to enter and coordinating sabotage for specific events. Their family group chat revealed everything. Angela wrote, "He's got a contest this weekend. I'll activate the interference transmitter Saturday morning." Tyler added, "I'll mess with his antenna tuner calibration Friday night. Won't be obvious until he's under contest pressure." Brooke, 21, contributed, "Changed his logging software settings. Should crash when he hits 50 contacts." Their motivation was clear. They were deeply embarrassed that I participated in amateur radio. Angela complained that when neighbors asked about my hobbies, she was humiliated to say ham radio contests instead of something normal like golf. Tyler said his girlfriend's parents thought it was incredibly nerdy and weird that his dad did amateur radio. Brooke said her friends made fun of her when they saw my radio equipment and antennas. They wanted me to quit, but knew I'd found community and purpose in ham radio. So they'd been making contests impossible, causing equipment failures, creating interference that made me look like a bad operator, and generating complaints that damaged my reputation in the amateur radio community. The technical knowledge required for their sabotage was significant. They'd learned about radio frequencies, interference patterns, and equipment vulnerabilities specifically to destroy my contest performance. The hidden transmitter in the attic was sophisticated enough to track which frequencies I was using and follow me across bands. The State Amateur Radio Convention was next month, with 500 attendees, operators, emergency coordinators, equipment vendors, and club representatives. I'd been selected to present a workshop on contest operating techniques after my previous strong performances. My family said they'd attend to finally see what this radio thing is actually about. I documented everything and showed it to convention organizers and the FCC licensed frequency coordinator, the hidden interference transmitter, the family coordination messages, proof that my contest failures were deliberate jamming. Intentional interference is a serious violation of FCC regulations. The convention offered time during the opening session to address malicious interference and station security. At the convention, I explained that amateur radio operators face many technical challenges. But sometimes, the biggest challenge comes from family members who jam your signals because they're embarrassed by the hobby. I displayed the hidden transmitter from my attic, showed their coordination messages planning interference for specific contests, and revealed that my declining performance was entirely due to deliberate jamming by family members who thought amateur radio was too nerdy. Several contest coordinators confirmed they'd received complaints about interference from my call sign. Interference I didn't generate, but that came from the hidden transmitter operated by my family. Other operators expressed outrage that someone would deliberately violate FCC regulations to sabotage a licensed amateur operator. Angela tried to claim they didn't understand the seriousness of radio interference. An FCC representative at the convention explained that deliberate jamming is a federal violation that could result in fines and criminal charges. Tyler admitted they researched how to create interference specifically to make my contests impossible. Brooke said they just wanted me to find a normal hobby. Multiple amateur radio operators responded that emergency communication, public service, and technical experimentation are valuable contributions, and that the amateur radio service has licensed operators of all ages pursuing legitimate activities that deserve respect, not sabotage. The FCC is investigating the deliberate interference. Angela, Tyler, and Brooke face potential fines for operating an unlicensed transmitter with intent to cause harmful interference. Angela and I are divorcing after she violated federal communication laws to force me to quit a hobby I love. Tyler and Brooke are estranged while facing legal consequences for their actions. The amateur radio community has been incredibly supportive. Several experienced contesters offered mentorship and station optimization advice. My contest performance has recovered completely without the deliberate interference. The convention where I was supposed to teach contest techniques became the moment everyone learned my techniques had been undermined by family members who thought amateur radio was too embarrassing to tolerate and chose to violate federal law rather than accept my hobby. Some think I should have confronted them privately, but the amateur radio convention seemed like the right venue to expose how licensed radio operations can be sabotaged by those who find technical hobbies too nerdy to respect. I discovered my family has been enrolling in my classes under fake names to sabotage them. I, 45, have been teaching photography workshops through our community center for 7 years. After losing my corporate job during the 2016 downsizing, I rebuilt my career around my passion for photography. My evening and weekend classes attract amateur photographers wanting to learn techniques, and I've built a reputation for patient, encouraging instruction. Teaching these classes brings me genuine joy and provides supplemental income. 4 months ago, my classes started having problems. Students would complain that other participants were disruptive, talking during demonstrations, monopolizing my attention with off-topic questions or creating uncomfortable dynamics. Equipment would malfunction or go missing. My ratings on the community center's feedback system dropped from consistent 4.8 to 5 stars to 3.2 stars in just 3 months. Last week, a longtime student named Patricia approached me privately. She said she'd wanted to tell me for weeks that there was a woman in our intermediate class who seemed deliberately disruptive, arriving late, making dismissive comments about my teaching, and complaining loudly that the class was a waste of money. Patricia had seen this same woman's car in my driveway once when she dropped off borrowed photography books. The woman had told the class her name was Monica Reed, but Patricia was certain she was actually my daughter-in-law, Vanessa. I pulled photos from previous classes. Monica Reed was definitely Vanessa, 28, wearing different hair and glasses. I checked other recent class rosters and found David Chen, my son, Lucas, 26, with a beard he doesn't usually wear. Sarah Mitchell was my sister-in-law, Beth, 43. 3 of my own family members had enrolled under fake names in different classes. I reviewed the past 4 months of class recordings that I keep for students who miss sessions. Vanessa as Monica constantly interrupted, made negative comments about my teaching methods, and complained that assignments were too hard or too easy, depending on what would be more disruptive. Lucas as David would show up late, create technical problems with equipment, and monopolize time asking questions designed to frustrate other students. Beth as Sarah was more subtle. She'd make dismissive faces during my demonstrations, whisper to other students during instruction, and leave pointed negative reviews after each class. I found her reviews online. Instructor seems unprepared and disorganized. Wouldn't recommend. These reviews from fake personas were destroying my ratings. I discovered their coordination through a family group chat I'd been removed from months ago, but could still access through our shared cloud. They'd been planning this for 5 months. Vanessa wrote, "Signed up for Mom's Thursday class, going to be as annoying as possible." Lucas added, "I'll take the weekend workshop and mess with the equipment like we discussed." Beth contributed, "Already left a 2-star review. A few more and her rating will tank." Their motivation was clear from the messages. They wanted me to quit teaching because the classes took up evenings and weekends they felt I should spend with family. Vanessa complained she couldn't drop by on weekday nights because I was teaching. Lucas resented that I wasn't available for Sunday dinners during my weekend workshops. Beth thought teaching community classes was beneath me and wanted me to find a real job again. Instead of asking me to adjust my schedule or discussing their concerns, they'd enrolled under fake identities to systematically destroy my teaching reputation and force me to quit by making the classes miserable for everyone. The community center was hosting an open house next month, showcasing all their programs with demonstrations from various instructors. Over 300 people would attend: current students, potential enrollees, center board members, and community supporters. I was scheduled to give a photography demonstration as one of their featured instructors. My family had said they'd attend to finally see what these classes are about. I compiled everything: the class recordings showing their disruptive behavior, the fake names they'd enrolled under, their coordinating messages, screenshots of Beth's negative reviews. I contacted the community center director and showed her the evidence. She was appalled and immediately offered me time during the open house to address instructor sabotage. At the open house, I gave my photography demonstration as scheduled. Vanessa, Lucas, and Beth attended as planned. Then, during the Q&A section, I explained that sometimes instructors face barriers not from students, but from family members who sabotage their work. I displayed the evidence on screens: my family members enrolling under fake identities, recordings of them being deliberately disruptive, their messages coordinating which classes to sabotage. I showed Vanessa as Monica interrupting and complaining, Lucas as David creating equipment problems, Beth as Sarah leaving fake negative reviews. The audience included several of my actual students who'd been in those classes and recognized the disruptive behavior. Patricia stood up and confirmed she'd been in classes with Monica and the disruption had made learning difficult for everyone. The community center director announced they'd be implementing ID verification for enrollments going forward, and would be removing fraudulent reviews from their system. Several students approached me afterward, saying they'd almost quit the classes due to the disruption and low ratings, not realizing it was manufactured. My family tried to claim they were checking if my teaching was actually good. I responded that enrolling under fake names to deliberately disrupt classes and leave negative reviews wasn't quality control. It was sabotage. They damaged my professional reputation and ruined the learning experience for students who'd paid for classes that were undermined by their deliberate disruption. Vanessa, Lucas, and Beth are no longer welcome at family events I attend. Most relatives sided with me, disgusted by the sustained deception. My teaching ratings are recovering as the fake reviews are removed and actual students share positive experiences. The classes they tried to destroy continue, and enrollment is increasing now that the deliberate disruption has ended. Some think I should have confronted them privately, but the open house showcasing my teaching seemed like the right moment to reveal how that teaching had been sabotaged by family members who found my schedule inconvenient. I discovered my family has been sabotaging my competitive fishing tournaments. I, 50, have been competing in bass fishing tournaments for 3 years. After my accounting firm downsized and I took early retirement, I turned my lifelong hobby into a serious pursuit. I fish regional amateur circuits, and while I'm not winning every tournament, I've placed in the money several times and qualified for a state championship. The competitive fishing community has been welcoming, and the mental focus required is therapeutic. 2 months ago, my tournament performances collapsed. My fish finder stopped working during competition despite functioning perfectly during practice. My trolling motor died mid-tournament, forcing me to paddle back while other competitors continued fishing prime hours. Twice, my live well pump malfunctioned, causing caught fish to die before weigh-in, resulting in disqualifications. Then my tackle started having problems. Expensive lures I'd carefully organized would be missing on tournament mornings. My fishing line, which I'd just respooled, would snap under minimal tension during competitions. Custom rods that cost hundreds of dollars developed loose guides that made them unusable mid-tournament. Other fishermen started avoiding me. My tournament partner canceled our team entry for the next competition, saying he'd heard I was unreliable and had equipment problems that affected my partner's chances. A tackle shop owner mentioned someone had been asking detailed questions about my purchases, claiming they were my spouse, checking that I wasn't overspending. Last Saturday, I installed a camera in my garage, where I store my boat and equipment. The footage showed my wife Jennifer, 48, unscrewing connections on my fish finder. My son-in-law Ryan, 27, appeared loosening my trolling motor battery cables. My daughter Madison, 25, was captured cutting my fishing line in multiple places so it would fail under load. I reviewed weeks of footage and found systematic sabotage. Jennifer had been disabling my electronics in ways that wouldn't be immediately obvious, but would fail during tournament use. Ryan tampered with my boat motor and battery systems. Madison damaged tackle and removed essential lures before competitions. Their coordination chat revealed everything. Jennifer wrote, "Disconnected his transducer cable again. His fish finder won't work during tomorrow's tournament." Ryan added, "Loosened the battery terminal. Motor will cut out after about 2 hours." Madison contributed, "Removed his 6 best crankbaits and nicked his line in 10 places. Should snap when he hooks a fish." Their motivation was clear. They were embarrassed that I spent retirement competing in fishing tournaments instead of what they considered more age-appropriate activities. Jennifer complained that when her friends asked about my retirement, she was embarrassed to say fishing tournaments instead of golf or travel. Madison said her in-laws thought it was weird a 50-year-old spent weekends in bass boats wearing fishing jerseys. Ryan agreed it was redneck and didn't match our neighborhood's image. They wanted me to quit, but knew I loved competitive fishing, so they'd been causing equipment failures that made winning impossible and created a reputation as someone with unreliable gear. Other fishermen were avoiding me as a partner because they thought my equipment problems would cost them placements and prize money. The financial impact was real. I'd lost entry fees for tournaments I couldn't complete due to equipment failures they'd caused. More importantly, my standings had dropped, affecting my qualification for bigger tournaments with substantial prizes. The State Bass Fishing Championship was next month, with 150 competitors and 400 spectators. Fishermen, families, sponsors, and outdoor sports media. I'd qualified after 2 years of consistent placement in regional tournaments. Prize money for top finishers was significant, and sponsors would be watching for potential endorsements. My family said they'd finally attend a tournament to see what this fishing obsession is about. I showed tournament organizers and my sponsors everything: the garage footage of family members sabotaging equipment, their coordination messages, documentation that my recent equipment failures were deliberate. The organization offered time during the opening ceremony to address competitor sabotage and equipment security. At the championship, I spoke during opening remarks and explained that competitive fishermen face many challenges: weather, water conditions, fish behavior. But sometimes, the biggest challenge comes from family members who sabotage equipment because they're embarrassed by the sport. I displayed footage showing Jennifer disabling my electronics, Ryan tampering with my motor systems, and Madison damaging tackle and line. I showed their messages planning sabotage before each tournament, celebrating when equipment failures caused me to perform badly or get disqualified. I explained that my declining tournament performance and unreliable equipment reputation were entirely manufactured by family members who thought competitive fishing was inappropriate for someone my age and social class. Several fishing partners confirmed they'd avoided teaming with me due to equipment concerns that were actually deliberate sabotage. Jennifer tried to claim they thought I was spending too much on fishing. A tournament director responded that anglers manage their own budgets and that sabotaging expensive equipment actually created financial losses. Madison admitted they were embarrassed by the sport, and multiple professional anglers in the audience responded that competitive fishing was a legitimate sport with skilled athletes at all ages. My family left in disgrace. I competed in the championship and placed 7th overall, winning prize money and sponsor interest achieved with properly functioning equipment. Jennifer and I are divorcing after she deliberately sabotaged equipment worth thousands of dollars to force me to quit something I love. Madison and Ryan are estranged from most of the family who can't forgive them for systematically destroying my tournament performance. The fishing community has been supportive. Several experienced anglers offered mentorship and equipment advice. Sponsors who'd been watching expressed interest despite my recent poor performance once they understood it was sabotage. The championship, where I was supposed to prove I belonged in competitive fishing, became the moment everyone learned my equipment failures were manufactured by family members who thought fishing tournaments were beneath our social status. Some think I should have confronted them privately, but the championship seemed like the right venue to expose how competitive fishing can be undermined by those who find the sport embarrassing rather than respectable. I discovered my family has been sabotaging my audiobook narration career. I, 53, transitioned into audiobook narration 5 years ago after vocal cord surgery ended my teaching career. What started as a way to use my voice again became a successful freelance business. I've narrated over 40 audiobooks for independent authors and small publishers, building a solid reputation for quality narration and reliable delivery. I work from a home studio I built in our converted garage, and the income, while modest, gives me independence and purpose. 6 weeks ago, authors started complaining about my recordings. They'd hire me for projects, I'd submit what I thought were clean, professional recordings, then receive messages about unacceptable audio quality, strange background noises, sections where my voice sounded distorted, or random sounds that ruined takes. I'd re-record and submit again, but problems kept appearing in my files that I couldn't hear when I was recording. From 4.9 stars to 3.6 stars in 5 weeks. Authors who'd worked with me before started choosing other narrators. A publisher I'd had a standing relationship with canceled an upcoming contract, saying my recent technical issues made me unreliable. I was devastated. I'd spent years building this career, and suddenly it was crumbling due to audio problems I couldn't identify or fix. Last Tuesday, I was in the middle of a recording session when I heard a faint thumping sound through my headphones. I stopped recording and searched my studio but found nothing. Then I noticed my microphone was picking up vibrations from somewhere. I traced the sound to a small device hidden behind my acoustic foam panels. It was a Bluetooth speaker that could be remotely activated to create barely audible interference that would ruin recordings. I found 3 more devices hidden throughout my studio. Speakers that could emit low-frequency sounds, a small motor that created vibrations affecting my microphone, and a device that interfered with my recording equipment, causing distortion. Someone had carefully planted these to sabotage my recordings in ways that would be difficult to detect during sessions, but obvious in final files. I installed security cameras in my studio and caught my wife, Sandra, 51, entering while I was out grocery shopping. She was checking the devices and adjusting their settings. I found her phone had an app controlling all the interference devices, with scheduled times matching my typical recording sessions. I discovered their coordination through family messages. Sandra wrote, "Activated the interference during his recording session today. Should mess up the files." My daughter Paige, 24, added, "Good. Maybe after enough complaints he'll finally give up this ridiculous voice acting thing." My son Dylan, 22, contributed, "I told you those devices would work. He can't figure out where the problems are coming from." They'd been destroying my recordings for 2 months, using sophisticated audio interference they'd researched and planted in my studio. Each device was designed to create specific problems that would make my work unusable without being obvious during recording. Their motivation was clear from the messages. They thought audiobook narration was an embarrassing profession. Sandra wrote that when people asked what I did, she was humiliated to say audiobook narrator instead of teacher. Paige complained her boyfriend's parents laughed when she mentioned my work. Dylan said his friends thought it was weird that I read books out loud for a living. They wanted me to quit and find what they considered a real job, or just retire. The interference devices had been expensive and required technical knowledge to set up. They'd invested significant time and money into destroying my career, rather than discussing their embarrassment about my profession. The Regional Narrator and Voice Actor Association was hosting their annual conference next month with 400 attendees, narrators, authors, publishers, and audio producers. I've been selected to present a workshop on home studio setup for beginning narrators. My family knew about the conference and had offered to finally come see what I do, since it was a professional event. I showed the conference organizers everything: the hidden interference devices, the app controlling them, Sandra's access footage, and their messages coordinating my career sabotage. The association offered me time during the opening session to address sabotage risks voice actors face. At the conference, I demonstrated proper studio setup and equipment, then explained that technical problems don't always come from inadequate equipment or poor technique. Sometimes they come from deliberate sabotage by family members who find your profession embarrassing. I displayed photos of the interference devices hidden in my studio and explained how they'd created problems that destroyed my reputation. I showed the control app and their coordination messages. I revealed the sabotage came from my wife and adult children, who'd spent months destroying my recordings because they were embarrassed to tell people I was an audiobook narrator. Several authors in the audience stood up confirming they'd hired me, then received unusable files, ultimately choosing other narrators after my work quality seemed to decline. Publishers expressed frustration at technical problems that had seemed unprofessional. All of them were shocked to learn the problems were manufactured by my own family. Sandra tried to claim they were concerned about my career sustainability. I responded that installing interference devices to ruin my work wasn't concern. It was sabotage. Paige said she was embarrassed by my profession, and an author in the audience responded that audiobook narration was a legitimate, respected career that brought stories to millions of listeners. The association helped me properly document the sabotage, and several authors offered to work with me again, now that they understood the technical problems weren't my fault. My reputation is rebuilding slowly as word spreads about what happened. Sandra and I are divorcing. I can't stay with someone who deliberately destroyed my career. Paige and Dylan are estranged, unable to understand why I can't just get over it, since it was just work. I've rebuilt my studio with better security and resumed narrating. The career my family tried to end continues, and the conference where I was supposed to showcase my work became the moment everyone learned how that work had been systematically destroyed by family members who valued their social comfort over my professional success. Some think I should have confronted them privately, but the narrator conference seemed like the right venue to reveal how narration work can be undermined by those who find it embarrassing rather than honorable. I discovered my family has been sabotaging my coaching to force me to quit. I, 51, have been coaching youth baseball for 15 years. I started when my oldest son, Jake, now 23, joined Little League, and I've continued coaching even as my kids aged out because I love teaching the game and mentoring young players. Over the years, I've coached hundreds of kids, many of whom have told me I made a real difference in their lives. It's volunteer work that takes up evenings and weekends, but it's become a core part of who I am. 4 months ago, things started going wrong in ways that had never happened before. Equipment would go missing right before games: bats, helmets, bases. Parents would show up at the wrong time, claiming I'd sent them texts with incorrect start times. During practices, water coolers would be empty when I'd filled them an hour before, or the field lights wouldn't turn on when I'd reserved them properly. The team's performance deteriorated rapidly. Kids would come to practice confused about drills I'd supposedly assigned, drills I'd never mentioned. Parents started complaining that I wasn't communicating properly. The league commissioner pulled me aside after 3 parents said I'd been disorganized and unprepared, failing to inform them about schedule changes I'd never made. Last week, everything came to a head when a parent confronted me about canceling Saturday's game without notice. I'd done no such thing. She showed me a text from my number saying the game was canceled due to field conditions. I never sent that text, but it came from my phone. When I got home, I checked my phone records and found dozens of messages I didn't send. Game cancellations, practice time changes, confusing instructions to parents and players. I installed tracking software on my phone and home computer. Within 2 days, I discovered my wife Teresa, 49, and our adult children Jake, 23, and Mia, 21, had been accessing my coaching accounts and phone to create chaos. They'd been deleting my scheduled messages to parents, sending fake cancellations, changing practice times, and creating confusion that made me look incompetent and disorganized. I found their group chat where they'd been coordinating the sabotage for 5 months. Teresa wrote, "If we make coaching enough of a hassle, he'll quit on his own, and we'll finally have our weekends back." Jake added, "I moved the equipment bag to the wrong field storage. It'll take him forever to find it before the game." Mia contributed, "Changed 3 parents' game times in his calendar. They'll show up at the wrong time and blame him." They'd been systematically destroying my ability to coach effectively. They'd take equipment from my car and hide it. They'd drain water coolers I'd filled. They'd access my coaching app and send contradictory messages to parents. They'd even call the league office pretending to be me, making scheduling requests that contradicted what I'd actually arranged. The motivation was simple. They wanted me home on weekends and evenings. They resented the time I spent coaching and decided to force me to quit by making it impossible to succeed. Instead of asking me to cut back or discussing priorities, they chose to destroy something I loved by making me appear incompetent to parents, players, and the league. The damage to my reputation was severe. Parents who'd trusted me for years started questioning my organization and commitment. The league considered replacing me as head coach. Players were confused and frustrated by the constant mix-ups. What had been a positive, successful program was falling apart, and everyone blamed me. The league's annual awards ceremony was next month, honoring coaches and players for the season. Despite the chaos, my team had managed to make the playoffs, and several players were receiving individual recognition. I was supposed to be honored for my 15 years of coaching, though the league was reconsidering given the complaints about my disorganization. I documented everything: the phone records showing messages I didn't send, the sabotage coordination in their group chat, video from my car camera showing Teresa removing equipment. I contacted the league commissioner and several team parents, explaining what had been happening and showing proof. At the ceremony, over 300 people attended: players, parents, coaches, and league officials. Teresa, Jake, and Mia came to support me, expecting a celebration. During the program, I was called up for my 15-year recognition. I accepted the award and then explained why the past 5 months had been so chaotic. I displayed the group chat messages on the venue screens, showing my family coordinating to sabotage practices and games. The fake texts sent from my phone, the equipment hidden deliberately, the schedule changes designed to create confusion. I explained that my wife and adult children had been systematically destroying my coaching effectiveness because they wanted me to quit and spend weekends at home instead. Teresa tried to claim they were just trying to get my attention about family time. I responded that sabotaging youth sports and making me look incompetent to parents and children wasn't communication. It was betrayal. Jake said they didn't think it would get this bad, and I pointed out they'd been coordinating for 5 months, watching my reputation suffer while they continued. Several parents stood up and said the confusion had been frustrating and sometimes harmful. Kids missed games because of fake cancellations. Practices were wasted without proper equipment. The league commissioner confirmed they'd considered removing me based on the complaints they now understood were manufactured. My family left in disgrace. The league issued a statement explaining what happened. Parents apologized for doubting me. I've continued coaching with new boundaries: separate phone for league communications, equipment stored at the field, coaching schedules that my family can't access. Teresa and I are in counseling, deciding if the marriage can recover from her actively trying to destroy something I loved. Jake and Mia have apologized, but don't understand why I can't just move on, since coaching is just a hobby. Some think I should have handled it privately, but the award ceremony where I was being honored despite their sabotage seemed like the right moment to explain why honoring me had become controversial. The 15 years of coaching they tried to end continues, and the reputation they damaged is slowly rebuilding. I discovered my family has been staging incidents to make my therapy dog seem dangerous. I, 47, have worked as a certified therapy dog handler for 5 years with my golden retriever Bailey. After overcoming my own anxiety and depression following a car accident that ended my nursing career, I trained Bailey to be a therapy dog, and we now visit hospitals, nursing homes, and schools, bringing comfort to people in difficult situations. It's become my purpose and passion. 3 months ago, I started receiving concerning reports about Bailey's behavior during visits. A nursing home administrator said a resident complained Bailey had growled at her during our visit. A hospital coordinator mentioned Bailey seemed aggressive during a pediatric ward visit. A school principal called, saying a teacher reported Bailey had snapped at a student. None of this matched Bailey's temperament. She's been evaluated multiple times and consistently scores excellent on temperament tests. She's gentle, patient, and has never shown aggression in 5 years of therapy work. But the reports kept coming, each one slightly different, but all suggesting Bailey was becoming unpredictable and potentially dangerous. My therapy dog certification organization had to investigate. Bailey and I were temporarily suspended from visiting while they reviewed the complaints. People who depended on our visits, elderly residents who looked forward to Bailey's weekly appearances, children in the hospital who found comfort in her presence, suddenly lost that support because of reports that didn't match anything I'd witnessed. Last week, a janitor at one of the hospitals I visit approached me in the parking lot. He said he'd seen my teenage son doing something strange during one of our visits, dropping loud objects near Bailey while I was focused on patients, trying to startle her into barking or reacting. I checked security footage from the locations where incidents were reported. At the nursing home, my daughter Zoe, 19, had been present in common areas during our visit, though she'd told me she was shopping nearby. The footage showed her deliberately stepping on Bailey's paw hard enough to make Bailey yelp, then telling a nearby resident that Bailey had just growled for no reason. At the hospital, my husband Craig, 49, appeared on footage in the pediatric ward where I thought he was waiting in the car. He was captured pulling Bailey's tail sharply when I wasn't looking, causing Bailey to turn around quickly, a movement that could be misinterpreted as snapping if you didn't see what provoked it. At the school, my son Ethan, 17, was visible near the classroom where I was doing a reading program with Bailey. He'd brought a friend, and they'd thrown something at Bailey that startled her into barking. Then Ethan had immediately gone to the teacher claiming Bailey had barked aggressively at students. I found their group chat coordinating these sabotage efforts. Craig wrote, "I'll come to the hospital visit tomorrow and make Bailey react. Another incident report should be enough to get her decertified." Zoe added, "I stepped on her paw hard at the nursing home. The resident totally believed Bailey was being aggressive." Ethan contributed, "My friend and I will do something at the school visit to make her bark. Teachers always overreact." They'd been deliberately creating situations to make Bailey appear dangerous or poorly trained, causing her pain or fear to provoke reactions they could report as aggression or instability. They wanted Bailey decertified as a therapy dog because they resented the time I spent on visits. Craig complained in messages that I spent more time with Bailey doing therapy work than with family. Zoe and Ethan resented that I wasn't available on weekends when I had scheduled visits. The Therapy Dog organization was hosting their annual recognition ceremony next month with 300 attendees: handlers, healthcare facility representatives, therapy dog certifying officials, and community supporters. I'd been nominated for Handler of the Year before the complaints started. My family planned to attend what they assumed would be my last event before Bailey's decertification was finalized. I showed the organization everything: the security footage of my family deliberately provoking Bailey, their coordinating messages, the pattern of false reports matching their sabotage schedule. The organization immediately reinstated Bailey and invited me to speak at the ceremony about challenges therapy dog teams face. At the ceremony, I accepted my handler recognition and explained that sometimes the biggest challenges don't come from training or certification requirements. They come from family members who sabotage therapy work by deliberately causing incidents to make dogs seem dangerous. I displayed the security footage showing my family hurting or startling Bailey to provoke reactions they could report. The messages planning which visits to sabotage. The false reports they'd filed while knowing Bailey's reactions were caused by their deliberate actions. Healthcare representatives in the audience were horrified. They'd filed reports about Bailey based on my family's manufactured incidents, nearly ending a therapy dog partnership that brought comfort to vulnerable people. Several facility coordinators stood up, confirming patients had genuinely benefited from Bailey's visits and were upset when they ended. My family tried to claim they were concerned Bailey might actually hurt someone eventually. I responded that a dog doesn't become dangerous from being deliberately hurt and startled. They'd created the exact situations they claimed to fear. They'd prioritized their convenience over patients, residents, and children who found comfort in therapy dog visits. The organization banned my family from attending any future therapy dog visits. Craig and I are divorcing. I can't stay married to someone who would hurt my dog to force me to quit meaningful work. Zoe and Ethan are living with their father while we rebuild trust, though I don't know if relationships can recover from them deliberately causing pain to an innocent animal. Bailey and I have resumed visits to all our regular locations. Patients and residents welcomed us back enthusiastically. The work my family tried to end by hurting my dog continues, and Bailey's temperament remains as gentle as ever, despite what they put her through. Some think I should have confronted them privately, But the ceremony honoring therapy dog work seemed like the right moment to reveal how that work had been sabotaged by family members who found it inconvenient and chose to hurt an animal rather than discuss their feelings. I discovered my family has been reporting me to get me removed from my mentoring program. I, 52, have been volunteering with Second Chances Youth Program for 6 years, mentoring teenagers from difficult backgrounds. After my younger brother died from addiction when I was 30, I've felt compelled to help kids who might be heading down similar paths. I mentor 3 to 4 teens at a time, meeting them weekly, helping with homework, teaching life skills, and just being a consistent presence in their chaotic lives. 2 months ago, the program director Karen called me in for a serious meeting. She said they'd received multiple concerning reports about my mentoring, that I'd been showing up late or missing sessions, that teens felt uncomfortable around me, and that parents had complained about inappropriate behavior. I was shocked. I'd never missed a session, and my mentees seemed to trust me. We'd built real relationships over months and years. Karen showed me the complaints. Anonymous reports filed over the past 3 months claiming I'd canceled sessions without notice. That one teen said I made them uncomfortable with personal questions. That I'd been seen arguing with a mentee in public. None of it was true, but the reports were detailed enough to seem credible. They included dates, locations, and specific incidents that sounded problematic if you didn't know they were fabricated. The program had to investigate. I was temporarily suspended from mentoring while they looked into the allegations. My current mentees, Marcus, 16, Destiny, 15, and Jordan, 17, were reassigned to other mentors. These were kids who'd finally started trusting an adult, and suddenly I disappeared from their lives without explanation. I started investigating the complaints myself. I contacted parents of my mentees and asked if they'd filed concerns. None had. The parent complaints were fake. I asked my mentees directly if they'd ever felt uncomfortable. All 3 were confused and upset. They hadn't reported anything and were hurt that our mentoring had been stopped. I requested details about how the anonymous reports were filed. They came through the program's online reporting system and via phone calls to the program office. I had the program pull phone records for the calls. 3 numbers appeared repeatedly. My wife Denise, 50, my son Garrett, 24, and my daughter-in-law Phoebe, 26. I found their text thread planning the reports. Denise wrote, "Filed another complaint about him being late. If we keep this up, they'll have to remove him from the program." Garrett added, "I called the office pretending to be Marcus's mom, said she was concerned about inappropriate questions." Phoebe contributed, "I reported him arguing with a kid at the mall, made it sound really bad." They'd been systematically filing false reports designed to get me removed from mentoring. They'd fabricate incidents, impersonate concerned parents, and create detailed complaints that would trigger mandatory investigations and suspensions. They researched what kinds of complaints would be taken most seriously and filed exactly those types of reports. The motivation was clear from their messages. They were embarrassed that I mentored troubled kids and worried it reflected badly on our family. Denise wrote, "When people ask what he does, I have to say he spends his free time with juvenile delinquents. It's embarrassing." Garrett agreed. "My coworkers think it's weird my dad hangs out with at-risk teenagers instead of normal hobbies." They wanted me to quit voluntarily, but when I didn't, they manufactured enough serious complaints to force the program to remove me for liability reasons. The program was holding its annual fundraising gala next month with 400 attendees, donors, volunteers, community leaders, and some current and former mentees sharing their success stories. I'd been a featured volunteer in past years, but given the investigation, I wasn't invited this time. My family was planning to attend since we'd been donors in the past. I showed Karen everything. The phone records proving the complaints came from my family, their text coordination, proof they'd impersonated parents. The program was horrified and immediately reinstated me, inviting me to speak at the gala about barriers mentors face. At the gala, several former mentees spoke about how mentors changed their lives. Then I took the stage and explained that not all barriers to effective mentoring come from the obvious sources. Sometimes, the barriers come from family members who are embarrassed by the work and fabricate complaints to force you to stop. I displayed the false reports filed against me and revealed they came from my wife, son, and daughter-in-law. I showed their text messages coordinating complaints, impersonating parents, and celebrating when I got suspended. I explained that 3 teenagers lost their mentor suddenly because my own family was embarrassed that I worked with at-risk youth. Marcus, Destiny, and Jordan were in the audience with their real families. Marcus stood up and said my suspension had been devastating. He'd finally trusted an adult, and then I disappeared without explanation. Destiny added that she thought I'd abandoned her like other adults in her life. Jordan explained that stability matters to kids like them, and my family had destroyed that stability to save themselves from embarrassment. The audience was appalled. Several donors confronted my family about using false reports to undermine a program they claimed to support. The program director announced they'd be implementing better verification for complaints after learning how easily the system could be manipulated by people with malicious intent. My family left in disgrace. Denise and I are divorcing. She chose embarrassment over supporting work that mattered to me. Garrett and Phoebe are no longer welcome at family events most relatives attend. I've resumed mentoring Marcus, Destiny, and Jordan, though rebuilding trust after the unexplained suspension has been difficult. Some think I should have confronted them privately, but the gala celebrating mentorship seemed like the right moment to reveal how mentorship had been sabotaged by my own family's embarrassment. The 3 teenagers who lost their mentor because my family filed false reports deserved to know it wasn't their fault. And the community supporting at-risk youth deserved to know the system could be weaponized by people who found the work embarrassing. I discovered my family has been sabotaging my community theater performances to force me to quit. I, 50, have been performing in community theater for 9 years. After my divorce and losing my mother the same year, joining the local theater company helped me rebuild my confidence and find joy again. I've performed in over 20 productions, taking roles ranging from small parts to leads. The theater community became my second family during the hardest period of my life. 4 months ago, strange things started happening during productions. Costumes would go missing hours before performances. Props would be in the wrong places. My makeup would be tampered with. And once my script pages were rearranged, so I went on stage with the wrong scene prepared. I thought it was bad luck or stress, but it kept happening. During our last production, my costume for opening night disappeared from my dressing room 30 minutes before curtain. I had to improvise with something completely wrong for the character, throwing off the entire visual consistency of the scene. The director was frustrated, and other cast members started questioning my professionalism. I'd never been disorganized or careless before, but suddenly I was the person causing technical problems. Last week, I overheard 2 cast members discussing how my teenage daughter Lily, 16, had told them I was getting too old for this and embarrassing myself by still doing theater. One cast member mentioned Lily had implied I was losing my memory, and that's why I kept having problems with costumes and props. I was confused. When had Lily been talking to my castmates? I checked my dressing room more carefully before the next rehearsal and found a hidden camera. Someone had been monitoring my preparation routine, learning when I'd step away and what items I relied on, then using that information to sabotage me at critical moments. I traced the camera to my son, Owen, 18, who'd helped set up the dressing rooms before our production started. I found more evidence. My ex-husband, Greg, 52, had been volunteering backstage for recent productions, giving him access to props and costumes. Lily had befriended cast members through social media and been spreading rumors about my declining abilities. Their group chat revealed everything. Greg wrote, "Moved her costume to storage. She won't find it before curtain." Owen added, Camera shows she leaves her station at 6:45 every night. Perfect time to mess with her props. Lily contributed. Told 3 cast members she's been forgetting lines and acting confused. They're starting to believe she's declining. They'd been coordinating sabotage for 5 months, each using different access points to create chaos that made me look incompetent or unstable. Greg's backstage volunteering gave him access to technical elements. Owen's camera setup let them time their sabotage perfectly. Lily's social manipulation made cast members interpret the problems as signs I was struggling rather than being targeted. Their motivation was clear from messages. They thought theater was beneath me and wanted me to quit. Greg wrote that my theater involvement was embarrassing to our kids. Owen complained that his friends made fun of him for having a mom who plays pretend. Lily resented missing family dinners because of my rehearsal schedule. They wanted me to quit voluntarily, but when I didn't, they manufactured enough performance problems and reputation damage to force the theater community to question whether I should continue. Some cast members had started suggesting I take a break or consider smaller roles because of the constant issues. The theater company was doing a gala performance next month, showcasing excerpts from our best productions, with 500 attendees including donors, community leaders, and all our performers and volunteers. I was performing a monologue from my most acclaimed role. My family said they'd finally attend one of my performances to see what all the fuss was about. I showed the theater director everything: the hidden camera, the sabotage coordination messages, evidence of Greg's prop manipulation, and Lily's social sabotage. The company was horrified and gave me time during the gala to address volunteer interference. During the gala, I performed my monologue flawlessly. Then I explained that my recent performance problems weren't due to declining abilities or professionalism. They were due to deliberate sabotage by my own family members who found my theater involvement embarrassing. I displayed the evidence showing Greg moving costumes, Owen's hidden camera monitoring my dressing room, and Lily spreading rumors about my mental decline. Their messages planning which performances to sabotage and celebrating when I looked unprofessional. The audience of 500 theater supporters was appalled. Several cast members stood up confirming they'd questioned my abilities based on the constant problems, not realizing I was being deliberately sabotaged. The director confirmed my actual performance record was excellent before the sabotage began. Greg tried to claim he was concerned about my well-being. I responded that hiding cameras and deliberately causing performance failures wasn't concern. Owen and Lily tried to say theater was taking too much of my time, and I pointed out they'd never asked me to adjust my schedule. They'd just decided to destroy something I loved. The theater banned my family from all productions and facilities. Most cast members apologized for doubting me. I've continued performing with better security measures, protecting my preparation spaces. Greg, Owen, and Lily face consequences both in our family and community. People who support the arts don't appreciate those who sabotage performers for convenience. Some think I should have confronted them privately, but the gala celebrating our theater work seemed like the right moment to reveal how my work had been undermined by family members who found my passion embarrassing.